Well, good morning, New Life. We are. I'm excited about today. I'm excited about something that happened this last Friday. Your lead pastor. A lot of you guys don't know this because he doesn't get a chance to play with us a whole lot. But my dad is a killer piano player, right? Like. Seriously, like really, really, really good, right? And so he sat in with the John Hollins band at Crystal Palace on Friday night. Oh my gosh, it was the funniest thing, man. He killed it, of course, and the band's great. But it was so funny. I talked to him on Saturday, and he was like a little kid, man. He was so excited. He was like, it was so fun, and I was nervous, and I was like, yeah, man. So anyways, next time you see him, give him a hard time about it. But, yeah, a lot of fun. And but we're continuing on this weekend with this series that we've been in, the Follow Back series. And we've been looking at how to follow Jesus in a greater way in our lives. And as we do that, again, not out of rules and regulations and obligation, but from a standpoint of understanding that Jesus is the ultimate example of what it is to trust God, to walk in step with this life of submission, and to see how it impacts. Our entire world was changed in a matter of 33 years, right? Like our entire world, everything about it changed all because of this man, Jesus. And then now, 2,000 years later, give or take, now here we are, and there's billions of people that follow this man and do their best to. And it's quite an amazing thing. And so I think that it's been really cool, too, to see how many people have really been engaged in new ways, that it's no longer just going to church, but really participating in being the church. And the ways man, it's just so beautiful. It's what we're here for. This whole place is here to allow a safe place for people to come, to discover God, right? You see our 4 purposes out there, right? To know God, to be restored, to uncover purpose, and then ultimately to live this life abandoned and trusting that you are here for a purpose and that God is doing something in your life. And it's so beautiful to see. We've been seeing just tons and tons of stories of people really discovering purpose in their life. You know, and again, it's our heart. It is always our heart to just help you get onto the next step of whatever it is that God's been doing. And so it's been so exciting. And I'm excited about today. Me and my wife were talking. I didn't realize it. I've been doing worship a lot, which, I had no argument here. I love doing it. But it's been like 9 weeks since I've been up here to talk with you guys. So not to put any pressure on myself because it's probably not going to be that great. But I still am excited to be up here talking with you guys and to take on this next part of this series, Follow Back. And today we're going to be talking about how to be a hero. How to be a hero, at least in the way that Jesus was. There's multiple definitions, lots of definitions out there of what a hero is, what it isn't. But Jesus Christ is the greatest hero of all time. And you know what? I saw there's a T-shirt that's been going around for a while, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I thought this is kind of the epitome of what we're talking about today. So go ahead, put it up there. How great is that? And that's how I save the world. As we follow Jesus, we too can become heroes. Heroes to the people around us and our circle of influence, truly being there to help people. But there is a big difference between a hero and being famous, right? Being a hero and being a celebrity. You can be a hero who's also famous, but you can be a hero who nobody really knows about. You can be a celebrity that's a hero, but you can also be a celebrity that is not heroic in any way, correct? So, what are some of the differences? I mean, it's the difference between Mother Teresa and Mama June. Some of y'all know who she is. Difference between Billy Graham and Billy Idol. right? The difference between Martin Luther King Jr. and Stephen King, right? One changes the world, one scares us completely. But there is a big difference between being a hero and being a celebrity. So what are the differences? Is it talent? Of course not. Both can be talented. Both cannot be talented. Intelligence? No. Both of them can be either or. Persistence, maybe? No. Both of them can be persistent. Both of them can just be lucky or in the right place at the right time. What is it that separates? It is the idea that a hero sacrifices for others. A hero lives a life of sacrifice, of understanding that this life is here to be poured out, not to gain and receive. And so I want us to look at this man, Jesus, that we follow, because he is still the perfect example of that. And did you guys know there are two John 3:16s in the Bible? Yeah? There's John 3:16, we all know, right? For God so loved the world. But then we have 1 John 3:16, which is a beautiful verse, and I love this one too. Look at it. It says, Jesus gave his life for us, so we should give our lives for our brothers and sisters. Jesus gave us, so therefore we should give, right? And the more we follow Jesus, the more we become like him. The more we start to see like him, the more we start to think like him. And the beauty is the scriptures promise us that his spirit is in us, and it's waiting to come alive, right? When we're filled with the Spirit, we're filled with the Spirit of Christ. And the more that we submit, and the more we start to walk in line with this beautiful way that he laid out for us, the more we start to perceive life. The more we start to see other people through his eyes, and not just how they affect our world. We start to have compassion in ways that we never dreamed of having compassion. We start to see beauty in the smallest of things. That's what happens when we follow Jesus. We start to come more and more like him. There is a desire in each and every one of us to make this life count. Now, we go through seasons of it, right? We become more aware of it. And we're just like, sometimes you're going through the motion, the routine, right? We all hit those periods in our life where it's just grind. But there's always these moments where sometimes it's alone, late at night, and sometimes it's just when we've had, we're hangry. You guys ever get hangry and start contemplating life? It's a horrible idea. But God designed each of us with this thing deep inside of us to long to do, to be a part, to participate. And God has put that in each and every one of us. But he's also designed us with the ability to choose it. Like you were designed to choose it. Why? Because God is love. And this is how God works. When you think of God, the only way that we have to describe God is the Trinity. And think about how the Trinity works. It's complete unity between Father, Son, and the Spirit. It is all through relationship that God does God. That's how he calls us into it as well. Because God is love, and God calls us into his love. And in that, we start to work through this relationship. But you have to choose it. It's the idea of a covenant relationship versus a consumer relationship. A consumer relationship is always going to demand that the other party adjust to their needs. But a covenant relationship says, I'm always going to adjust to your needs, period. Right? And then when everybody in the relationship is operating that way, you find unity. You find this beauty that happens that is unleashed that can't be unleashed in a consumer relationship. And that's what God has given us. He's given this ability to choose, to participate. Because you don't have to follow Jesus. You don't. It's all your decision. But you can decide it. And when you do, man, that's when it's unbelievable what God begins doing. And there's countless stories in this room of people who started taking that steps, and they can testify to the beauty of what it is to really see life through the eyes of Jesus and not through our own issues, problems, insecurities, or fears, but to see it through these eyes that are just filled with beauty. So the question is, are you ready to respond to this call to be a hero? To be what God has created you to be? God has created you, yes, unique and as an individual, but he has created each and every one of us to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. So often we get really focused on ourselves, on either making ourselves better or letting go of things or whatever it is. And it's just a lot about us. And not that that's bad in itself, but the idea of following Jesus is to die to yourself, to your pride, to your ego, to your fears and insecurities. And as you do that, man, the Spirit of God is unleashed in you, and you start to see life with a sense of confidence that cannot be mustered up through your own strength, right? It just can't. There's something about knowing that the divine is holding you. So when you have to step off that cliff, right? And there's this, I always talk about, I love that scene in Indiana Jones, where he has to step off onto the invisible. No? Indiana Jones fans? No? Okay. Anyways, point being is that there is something unbelievably powerful unleashed in you when it's the Spirit of God that is driving you and strengthening you, and not your own willpower, not your own strength. So how can we be a hero? Why should we be a hero for God? Let's start there. Why? Well, the first one in your outline is because God sacrificed for me. Why should I be a hero for God? Why should I live a life of submission, of sacrifice? It's because God sacrificed for me. See, God sent his one and only Son, right? The other John 3:16. That whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. God sacrificed for us. Hebrews 9. Christ came to take away all sin by what? By sacrificing himself. And then Ephesians 5, I love this. This is out of the Message translation. Listen to it. Mostly what God does is love you. Keep company with him and learn a life of love. Observe how Christ loved us. If his love was not cautious but extravagant. He didn't love in order to get something from us, but to give everything of himself to us. Love like that. That's how I want to love. True love is always sacrificial. You can't experience true love without giving yourself, right? There's lots of stuff that we'll talk about that we love, right? Lots of stuff, right? How many times have you said love it, right? Whatever it is, right? You seen that movie? Yeah, love it, right? I went golfing this Friday, and I got a new driver, and I love it, right? Like, man, it was awesome. And I was just like, my buddy's like, man, you're hitting that good. I was like, yeah, I love it. And then I was sitting down writing this message that afternoon, right? And I was talking about love, and I went, I don't love this thing. I love myself through this thing, right? Like, it's, there's this old pastor. I loved him, man. He was so beautiful. His name is Jerry Cook. He passed away a few years ago, and he's just one of my favorites. And I remember we were at this men's camp, and he was going on about his message, and then he just kind of stopped. This is a men's camp, right? So it's like lots of dudes, testosterone going on in the room. And he just stops and he goes, you know what? I feel like I need to say something. Totally off subject. And he goes, some of you men in this room are ready to leave your wife because you say you've stopped loving them. Yeah, that's what it sounded like in the room when he says that. And he goes, but I want to challenge you. If you are ready to leave your wife because you stopped loving her, it's probably because you never really loved her. You were just loving yourself through her. And when she stopped letting you do that, you're ready to go. Just silence, right, in this whole place. And I remember sitting there, stuck with me. I was young. I was probably like 25 at the time, something like that. And I just remember in my heart, like, getting this thing that was just like, do I really give myself? Like, do I love my wife to that degree where it's not about how is she responding to me? Like, am I truly in this? And that's when I learned the definition of covenant. And it was such an impactful thing because you have to give yourself, to sacrifice yourself to truly experience the depths of love that God is calling us to. And when you do that, I'm telling you, there is something so profound and deep and moving. Our relationship has gotten so much better over the years because of that moment right there. Because it just made me start thinking in a new way, that I had just been challenged. And by the way, I wasn't getting ready to leave her. That wasn't me he was talking to. I should clarify that. You're welcome, love. Oh, man. But you have to sacrifice yourself, your time, your energy, your money, all of it. You have to be willing to sacrifice it in order to truly participate in it. And when you do, it is experiencing a depth of love that you will never be able to experience solely receiving, ever. And that's what God is showing us here. That in order for us to step into this life of being a hero, we have to be willing to sacrifice ourselves. And when we do, we're going to experience the depths of the love of God in ways that we can never do by just receiving. You have to give yourself, because love always requires sacrifice. I remember one time I experienced this from kind of a random person. It's a buddy of mine, and I knew them well, but it was when I was making my last record. It was probably, 5 years ago, something like that. But we did this Kickstarter campaign to raise the funds for it, right? It takes about 10, 12 grand to make a record. And I'm broke, so I can't have that much money, right? So, but there was a lot of people who was like, man, we want to be a part of it. We want to help. So we started this Kickstarter campaign. Basic idea of it, if you don't know what it is, you could set the limit, 30, 45 days, whatever. And then people pledge, I'm going to give this much money. If it reaches the goal, then you get the money. And if you don't reach the goal, then nobody's credit cards are charged and you just don't get any of it. Okay? So it's like this, I don't know. It's fun and scary all at the same time. And so we're doing it. We get to literally, it was like the last day. And we were $1,200 short from meeting the goal. And I was like, well, it's up to God. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If not, we'll start to figure something else out. But inside, I was like, God, please, right? I really want to make this record, man. I feel like it's going to be, God's giving me some songs. I want to get it out there. And anyways, I get this alert. I said, congratulations, your goal has been met. And I was like, what? It was like 10 minutes later. And I get on there and look, and it's this buddy of mine who he literally pledged the final $1,200. He doesn't have that kind of money, and to just be given away. And I was so excited, but then at the same time, I know what he was going through at the time, and I was like, oh. Then I started I can't accept this. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I don't know what to do. I feel bad, and so I called him up, and I was just like, dude, what? He's like, listen. I love you. I believe in what you're doing. I know how your music's impacted me, and I just want to be a part of it. And I was like, and then he goes, don't take my blessing from me. I was like, dang, all right, man. And so we made the record, and now when I'm in the studio, I'm telling you, it was such an inspired time, not just because of the songs and the things like that, but in that moment, I kept having these flashes of people in my head who invested in this and gave to it, and it was it was so overwhelming and just powerful. That type of sacrificial love, man, when it happens, it was spectacular. No one makes it alone, right? So much of what a hero is in the, definition of superheroes and stuff is this one person doing it alone, and they're marching into the depths of whatever, the bowels of hell, to take over this thing, and, they look like Hercules, and they're just all swolled up, and so you right, that's kind of what you think of. You're just what's a hero? But the reality of it is, no hero that we have, that is not make-believe, is they never made it alone. There was always people in a group that was participating in this thing moving forward. Whatever this thing is that we're trying to do, that we're trying to achieve, that we're trying to impact, it was never done alone. It takes sacrifice for us to do it. And that's what Christ has done for us. And again, since God is willing to make that sacrifice, the more we follow Jesus, the more we realize that we can participate in the same way. And it's unbelievably freeing. It's beautiful. All right, so why should we be a hero for God? God sacrificed for me, and then God created me to help others. God created me to help others. I just missed my mouth, by the way, on that drink. You and I were made to live for God's purpose. You were created and designed. So much of what we do here, again, is the idea that we want you to discover your purpose. You are not here to just suck up air and exist. You are here on this planet for a purpose. And there's something that God is wanting you to be a part of that is far bigger and greater than you could ever imagine. I'm not talking about, having, 100 million followers on Instagram or something. I'm talking about something that is going to last far beyond generation after generation, that maybe your name will even be forgotten, but your participation in it will never be forgotten. There's something so big and powerful of understanding that you have been placed on this planet with a specific design. And when we're not living in God's purpose, there's something so frustrating about it. I'm a huge believer in the fact that if you are not stepping in line with God, and I'm not talking about rules and regulations, I'm talking about truly a heart after God. If you don't have that, that is the root of so much of our frustrations, our anxieties, of the things that can settle in, depression and things. And that's really a root of so much negativity in our life, because it's living off of this false sense of purpose or energy. C.S. Lewis talks about that we're all engines, that God created you, and you're like an engine that runs on petrol, right? Like there is nothing else you were meant to run on. And you can find other things that, that might make you run, but you're never going to be at full capacity, and you're never really striving the way that God has created you to strive. And that's the same kind of thing here, is like God created you to do this. He doesn't want you getting caught in the frustrations of uncertainty, or, those, I play in this band called Soul Jar, and we had this song called Existential Funk. It's a good title, right? Existential Funk. But it's just that, where you get there like, God, why am I here? Why am I here? I'm the only one? No? You guys never did that? Okay. But the reason we get in that is because we get frustrated, and we get frustrated because we're trying to, and it could be good things, by the way. We're not talking about bad versus good. We're talking about just stuff. You start to fill your life with these things that you think is going to make you better, and it might make you more productive. But unless you are solely dependent on God Almighty, it is always going to be a knockoff. Always. There's no substitute for God. Ephesians 2:10. It is God himself who has made us what we are and given us new lives from Christ Jesus. And long ago, he planned that we should spend these lives in helping others. God has a purpose and a plan for your life. And, our prayer is that you will start stepping in line with his purpose in your life. And as you do that, there is an unbelievable amount of freedom. But again, when you use things for a different purpose than they're intended for, it can just messes things up too. I remember, I grew up with an amazing father who has all kinds of wisdom and great leadership and great, whatever, all kinds of stuff. Taught me how to shoot a jump shot. But he has never turned a wrench in his life. Ever. The only time he's held one is to pass it to someone else, right? Ever. And so I asked him, I was like, Dad, why don't you learn to do this stuff? And he was just like, because then they'll expect it from me. It's like, oh yeah, you're smart. So in my house, I had to figure stuff out on my own, right? And my only teacher wasn't my dad, it was my mom. And my mom, she'll get stuff done, right? But it is not going to be in the right way at all. And she bites her cheek when she's doing something, she's like really intense. And so I came in one day and she was just putting together this thing and she's got a butter knife in her hand. And I was like, and she's all frustrated and biting her cheek. And I was like, Mom, why don't you just get a screwdriver? She's like, I can't find it. And I was like, but you're so frustrated. Why are you using the butter knife? She's like, I just got to get it done. That's what we're doing when we're not living through the purpose that God has created us for. It might work-ish. We might have some productivity. We might do some things that are kind of cool in our lives. But there's always going to be this frustration, and it's never going to be, just how, it just clicks the way it's supposed to, like a real flathead screwdriver. I'm also a big fan of duct tape. Big fan. Yeah, I got some duct tape fans in the house. I got an 86 4Runner. Half of it's held together by duct tape. So, point being, is God created you for a purpose, a specific purpose. And the only way to figure that out is by learning to submit to Him, to learn to sacrifice to those around you. And as you do, you begin to uncover this purpose in your life. And when you start walking in your purpose, man, I'm telling you, it is something so rewarding and amazing. I remember one time I had this friend of mine. We were like 14, and we were at Pismo, and we saw these guys with a skimboard, where they throw it down right through the water and jump on it and ride across. I was like, man, that looks fun. And he was like, yeah, I wish we had one. I was like, I got a boogie board. And I said, I bet it'll work. You should try it. It's kind of like the hold my beer thing, right? Like, we weren't drinking beers, but you know my point. Like, here, try it. And he's like, okay. So he throws it down, and he jumps on it. Well, it's not built the same way. And what does it do? It sticks. So he flies forward and breaks his arm, and it looks like a swan. It was terrifying. And I was like, don't ever do that again. So, point being, is you were meant for a purpose. And when you start doing all that, you can break your arm. No, I'm just kidding. One of God's basic principles is that you reap what you sow, right? We've all heard this, right? You reap what you sow. And the idea is that if you give out criticism, you're going to get some criticism, right? If you give out harsh words, judgment, you're probably going to get that back. But if you give out compassion and generosity, then all of a sudden God starts doing some amazing things in your life. And so, when you follow Jesus, He is generous, and then you too start to become generous. See, when you start to give this out, then all of a sudden it starts to come back to you, and it becomes this beautiful relationship between you, the divine, the people around you. And that's what this community is being driven through, is generous people. And the heroic people that we have in this place that you'll never know is substantial. It's so beautiful, the people that we have, that you'll never know their names. They work behind the scenes. And it's spectacular the way God does what God does. He uses us. When we sacrifice, when we step into His will, to His plan, it's truly beautiful. Matthew 10 says, Jesus said, if you don't go all the way with me through thick and thin, you don't deserve me. If your first concern is to look after yourself, you'll never find yourself. But if you forget about yourself and look to me, you'll find both yourself and me. Isn't that a beautiful promise? So, the third reason of why we should be a hero for God is because God will reward you. God's going to reward you. So often we can feel unappreciated. And again, I don't mean this in like a, you've done something good for somebody or whatever, and they just don't even notice it and you get that feeling inside of you. There's something powerful about knowing, even when you feel that God is always watching, that God sees everything, and that there is a reward that is so substantial that is, man, it's moving when you realize that you move the heart of God by doing something to someone, helping them, whatever it is, and nobody notices. There's something so powerful about knowing that God is always there for you. Um, again, we all have this times where, you make these sacrifices, you do these things for people, and then all of a sudden it's like just nothing. And you're like, man, I hope they noticed. I hope, And I remember when God started to work in my heart, and again, I still do it, but there's this reminder that pops up. The Spirit will just remind, like, man, this isn't for recognition. This isn't for anything. You do good for the sake of doing good. And you trust that God is always God. He's always watching, and that He's so pleased with you. And in that, there truly is a reward. Hebrews 6, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love that you have shown Him as you have helped His people and continue to help them. You can feel unappreciated, but God always notices. In Mark 10, Jesus says, "Mark my words. No one who sacrifices house, brothers, sisters, mothers, father, children, land, whatever, because of me and the message will lose out. They'll get it all back, but multiplied many times. And then there's the bonus of eternal life." You can't outgive God. You can't outgive God. And that's the thing you always have to remember. The reward is so beyond the investment. So, that's why we can be heroes for God, but how can we live a life of a hero? Well, the first one is to worship continually. Worship continually. When we sing together, I heard somebody tell me that they went to church and a concert broke out, right? That's fun. It's lovely. I love it. But the idea of it is still always this, that God's people from all walks of life with all different kinds of things are here and unified for one reason. One reason. It has nothing to do with how well we all agree on things, right? Because that is not the case. But it's because we are children of God. We have been awakened to the truth and the revelation of Jesus Christ. And we're grateful that we get to participate. We are grateful that we understand that we are children of God. That's what worship is. It's a heart of gratitude always. It's a sense of saying, God, I'm abandoning myself in this moment. When you're worshiping where you are, listen, some of you, you can sing all right. Some of you, just, you make a joyful noise. That's good. Make a joyful noise. But it's not about that. It's about you abandoning yourself and not worrying about what the person next to you is thinking or what the person next to you sounds like. No, it's us singing out the glories of God. I ran out of that grave because of you. I am no longer dead because of you. Isn't that beautiful? Psalms 50:23 says, "True praise is a worthy sacrifice." So we worship God continually. We help other people. Romans 6 says, "Give yourself completely to God, every part of you." You want to be tools in the hands of God to be used for His good purposes. If you ever need help figuring it out, every third week of the month we have Connect Class 3. It's there to help you kind of discover what are your gifts, what are your traits, what are the things that you might naturally be leaning towards. That's a big part of it. You can always find more information on that on our website as well. But third week of the month we do the Connect class during this service right here. Giving sacrificially. Giving sacrificially. Psalms 50:14. Give your offerings to show thanks to God. Give God what you have promised. Again, you can't outgive God. We're in the middle of the 90-day challenge still right now. So many of you have taken that and started stepping into it. But again, it's not always just money. Energy, time, resources. Giving back to God, giving sacrificially. And it truly creates this atmosphere that we're not worried about what we have or don't have. We're all here to participate in what is happening. And then the last one is share good news with others. Share the good news with others. We're going to be spending a whole week on this here in a couple weeks of sharing your story. I know that's an intimidating thought for a lot of us. But here's what I want you to capture. Hebrews 13, the writer writes, "With Jesus' help, we will continually offer our sacrifice of praise by telling others of the glory of his name. When Jesus walked this earth, they were looking for a hero. They assumed the Messiah was going to ride in, take over the Roman government, was going to kick them out of this promised land, and the Messiah was just going to triumphantly take over everything and bring Israel back to where they thought it was supposed to be. And so when Jesus rides in on the donkey, right, the week before, Palm Sunday, we're coming up on it here not too long, and he walks in and everybody's worshiping and praising his name. They're so excited. This is the hero, the Messiah, coming to save us all. And then when they realized that that's not what it was going to look like, immediately they turned on him. And then we get the image of Jesus Christ hanging on a cross, naked, bruised, bleeding. They're spitting on him. Every one of those thousands and thousands of people are gone. And the only people still there is just a small amount of people and then some guards making fun of them. Not very heroic in our traditional way of thinking about it. Naked, abused, betrayed. He went through every ounce of heartache and abandonment and the grossness of the depth of human pride was completely engulfed on him at one moment. And there's something so powerful about understanding that in that moment, he's held strong. He said, God, your will be done, not mine. It's yours. God, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. Think about the compassion of hanging there. So, is there another, a deeper definition of a victim? This was a victim. This wasn't a hero. But he understood that the power of God is way deeper than any pride of man. He understood that there is glory on the other side of the sacrifice. That there is a reward so great that it is going to impact all of humankind. That 2,000 years later, there are billions of people right now within a 24-hour period that are worshiping the name of Jesus and trying their best to walk in line with him. You can go through history of the heroic people that went in, and that's great. But they didn't impact humanity the way Jesus, there's not even close. It's not even close. So when we're talking about following Jesus, yes, there is sacrifice involved. And yes, there are times where you have to go against the things that your flesh wants. But on the other side of it is a glory, is a reward that is so impactful, that is so beyond anything you can imagine. And that's what it means to follow Jesus. Now again, I'm not saying it's all or nothing. You start today with what you have to give. Just take the baby steps. Whatever it is, you begin and you grow in it and you walk. It's a progress. Here's the other beautiful thing about it, is God isn't saying do it all now or nothing. He's saying, I bless your faith. And even with a mustard seed size of faith, God can move mountains. So it's not about all or nothing. Take those steps. Trust in him. And realize that God has created you to be a hero in your house, in your home, in your workplace, in your community. And give it all the rest to God. Everything else.